I'll talk for just a very couple of brief moments about how I ended up where I am, because I think my story is hopeful for other people, in the sense that I'm not a formally trained actor. I'm not a radio guy. I haven't come from a theatre or a film background. I was the dad that did funny voices for his kids at the dinner table, and bedtime stories, and doing all the voices in the books and all of that. And in Christmas 2011, I always thought it was 2012, but we figured out recently that it was actually 2011. My wife bought me, I was working for a bank at the time, as a financial advisor, which I had been doing for not quite 30 years. And my wife bought me a one-day introduction to voiceovers as a Christmas gift to get me out the house. Go on, fuck off. You're driving me crazy. So this was in the UK, so I got on the train and went up to London, and I went to this thing, and then he did other workshops, and about once or twice a year I would buy one of his workshops and go up to that. And then in 2013, remember when all the banks were having a few problems with the credit problems, and they were trying to let people go, and I had reapplied to keep my position 2 or 3 times. And it got to a point where, every time they got rid of somebody, they would lump that work onto you. And I'm like, I'm going to have a heart attack doing this. I am done. I volunteer as tribute. I'm out of here. And they did eventually let me go. But that created a problem. I was the breadwinner for the family, and we had a big mortgage and all that. My wife's American. Her mom had passed away. Her dad lives in Cowpens. So we said, right, we're gonna sell everything, take what money we have, and move to America to be near her family. That's what we did. And I'm like, well, it's not enough money to retire, not by a long way. So what am I gonna do? So I went to this guy in London. His name is JP Orr. Turns out he was an Emmy award-winning producer, so he knew what he was talking about. And his other lady that helped him was a lady called, oh God, her name escapes me for the moment. It'll come to me. Yvonne Morley. And she was head of voice at Lambda in London. So she knew what she was talking about. These are the people that I ended up in their circle. Anyway, I said to JP, do people get paid to do this voiceover thing? Shows you how naive I was. Yeah, he says. All right, okay, cool. I'm moving to America in like 2 or 3 months. Do you think anybody would ever hire me to do this voiceover thing? I've been to a few an event. Don't see why not. And that was the ringing endorsement that the Emmy award-winning producer gave me with which to send me off on my career. And I arrived here. There's more to the story, but I bought a computer, bought a microphone, didn't really know what I was doing, started spinning the wheels, and then some fool hired me. And then someone else hired me, and then someone else hired me. And after 5 years, I won Voice of the Year in the UK. Look, it's surreal. Over the period since I started getting nominated, I've been nominated for 30 awards across Voice of the Year, gaming, animation, corporate, commercial, demo reels, all sorts of malarkey, e-learning. And I've won 5 times. So it's going all right. It's going all right. But I tell all of that just to say, I feel like if I can do it, untrained actor, just doing silly voices for a kids, if I can have a story like that, I think anybody can. But what I don't want to mislead you is that it's easy, because I don't think it is. But anyway, so that's me. Let's see if this works. What are we going to talk about? Oh, there we go. Right, so we're talking about, we're at Film Bar, and so we're largely in filmmaking business. Actually, just a quick show of hands. Who here are actors? And who here are filmmakers? Something to do with filmmaking. So Not far off 50-50. Okay, cool, excellent. So for the actors, if you want examples of the kind of work that you might get as a voice actor, I've got a list here of about 30 different voiceover genres. And what I talk about, what I mean by that is that voiceover or voice acting is this kind of overarching term which covers work in about 30 different industries. Voiceover isn't just one industry. So there are people who specialize in, let's say, radio. Right? They might do radio imaging, and that might be where they generate the vast majority of their income. So I don't know how many thousands of little radio stations there are just in the US alone. You know, and the guy that says it's, you know, listen to, I don't know, whatever, classical FM or rock FM 101 or whatever, that's radio imaging. Or there are people, you see number 14 there, e-learning. Big corporate companies have been moving away consistently from hiring an individual to go and stand in front of a room of 20 people like this and creating a digital way of doing that, and that's called e-learning, and they need people to narrate that stuff, and it pays pretty well. If you asked around the industry, or if you go on my website and took a look at it, you'd probably get a sense that I'm a video game guy. Because I've chosen to kind of position myself that way. And in fact, this week I'll be have recorded for one, and I've got 2 more video games to record for this week. So there's a lot of that too. I did some work on this. Steam, which is where your PC games go, yeah, give or take, around 10,000 new games are placed onto the Steam platform every year. 10,000. I know. That's a lot of games. And do you know that represents less than half of all games? Because the other 50%, about 25% are on consoles, which is the small, and if you think that's between, say, 2 or 3 consoles, so the consoles actually make up the smallest part of the video game business. The biggest part of the video game business?
Apps.
Mobile phones, mobile games. 50% of all games are played on your phone. There's a new player that's just starting to come into video games as well, which is going to be the next big thing, and that's the streaming platforms. You're starting to see, who's got Netflix? Yeah. Have you noticed suddenly there's a little thing on Netflix, play games? Yeah, imagine this scenario. Netflix buys Blizzard, who do World of Warcraft and a whole bunch of other stuff. So now, if you subscribe to Netflix, you can play all of Blizzard's games. Isn't that interesting? Because it's all digital download now anyway, don't need a CD player or anything anymore. So I think the streaming platforms, they got their eye on that. Because video game business is worth more money than films and television put together.
I believe it.
Astonishing amounts of money. Anyway, so you can see some of these are highlighted in red. I've highlighted these in red for tonight because these are all things that impact on the film business. But I thought we should make it relevant to film. So probably you're all familiar with ADR, looping, walla, yeah, all that kind of background noise that goes on. Looping is like a whole. You'll know what looping is. Looping is like you might get half a dozen people or a dozen people in a studio like this with a bunch of things, and you'll be recording crowd noises. Right, and then they all perform together and create a sort of a crowd noise of 6 or 8 or 10 people, and then someone like Ken will loop that over and over, and suddenly you've got a crowd of 10,000 or 20,000 people. So it's called, that's looping. ADR is, well, it stands for automated dialogue replacement, but there ain't nothing automated about it. This is where you've got a picture in front of you and you've got to record the line in sync with the mouth movements, either both live action or animation. I always try to avoid ADR I thought it was really, really difficult. And when you start, it is. But our brains are amazing things. And once you get into the rhythm of it, it's great fun. And it's a real challenge. It's great fun. It was always been up until now, ADR, you had to go into a studio to do it. But ADR is now being performed at home. For example, there's a thing called Session Link Pro. Studios own it. You probably don't own Session Link. You probably don't have any call for it. Source Connect's different. The difference is that Session Link can send you a video and collect audio at the same time. Well, actually, two different links. So there's a studio in New York, and they send me a video link, and then another link to collect the audio. So they're showing me the video and recording my audio at the same time. So I'm ADRing at home through one thing. Source Connect can't do that. Yeah, there's a whole plethora of them. And Walla is just that kind of individual noise stuff that you might make. Sneezing, throwing up, coughing, running, that kind of stuff.
Do you throw up a lot when I'm doing my voiceover?
Yeah, we might, if we have time, I have a little fun thing for us to have a go at. Animation, of course, Walt Disney, animated movies, TV shows, anime, all that. There's just a mountain of animation being created. Part of that, the streaming services, again, they need content. And animation is relatively cheap to make compared to live action content. So they love animations. A lot of people making animation content and selling it to the streaming services, or trying to. What else have we got here? Audio description. So people who are poor of sight and are watching a movie or a TV, they can have something so the action is being described to them. So we go on. That's another. There's something called vocal eyes. Eyes spelt like eyes, and they do a lot. They kind of again, like a pressure group. They advocate for the addition of audio description to shows. It's something that a show has to choose to do. Of course, if you make a movie, it used to be DVD extras, but now if you go and you download a movie on I don't know, Hulu or whatever, and it'll say save to my watch list or whatever, and then there'll be extras. And it's all like the behind the scenes stuff, and they often need someone to narrate that, little documentaries. Offstage voice, which is, again, as the name suggests, might have been originally something in a theatre where you've got a voice off stage, not seen by the audience, but that happens in film and television as well. I was down in Atlanta about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. Main character in the show walks into a room, switches the TV on, walks over to make a coffee. It's just the kind of thing a normal person would do in their life. But of course, when they switch the TV on, something's got to be happening, doesn't it? So I went down to record 4 lines as a nature documentary. Oh, it's David Attenborough. Fucking hell. The man is like almost 100. Anyway. We'll come on to sides in a minute. I'll get something and it'll say British, age range 30 to 45, celebrity trope, David Attenborough. The man's 100. So things like that, everywhere. Someone answers the phone and you can hear the other side of the phone conversation. That's also voice, all that kind of stuff like that. And of course, once you've made your thing, you need to promote it. So promos and trailers. Promos are for shorter form television. They're the kind of thing that says it's coming on at 8 o'clock tonight on CNN or whatever, something like that. Trailers is like in your movies, In a World, all that kind of malarkey. Yeah, nobody does that anymore because of that. Except you'll get people who say, "Oh, we're going for that cheesy In a World sound," So anyway, I just wanted to show you how broad the opportunity is with voiceover. And whilst I might be known as a video game guy, to number 29, I've probably done all of this at one time or another. I've tried. I've been offered. No, I was Ian McShane. What was the show? The Continental. It was like an origin story, you know, John Wick. Yeah. Ian McShane is the guy that owns the hotel, and they did an origin story, and they needed a couple of lines from Ian McShane, and clearly it was cheaper to hire me to. Well, I'm sure they auditioned a bunch of people, but they chose me to do those couple of lines rather than saying, "Hey, Ian McShane, would you come into the studio for 10 minutes?" "Yes, that'll be £1 million, thank you." So yes, I have. Yeah, I've also done a fair number of things like David Attenborough. I would say my David Attenborough is pretty decent. Pepsi hired me. June Shine, they do hard kombucha. They hired me. That was my Super Bowl ad. Nice. I know, nice.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
How does this all correlate with AI, automation, and videos?
How does it correlate?
Well, I mean, because like right now, like I do like a lot of AI applications, and I like.
For your workflow?
Well, more than that, I build a lot of stuff. But
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, when you're talking about like voiceovers and stuff, like how does that play into technology? Because as things are evolving, you know, like they can just be like, hey, we're just going to do AI animation, and there's a voice on it.
Yeah, so coming back to Nava,
For protecting
using
clients, gotcha.
using an AI voice, if a business wants to do that, that's fine,
Okay.
right? But with the consent of the person that made the voice, or that the data was used from, with the knowledge of that person, and with compensation,
Okay.
Got it.
right?
Okay.
It's when you start stealing it
Right.
and using it without a contract or without permission or without consent, that's when it starts getting unpleasant.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. There's a Canadian lady called Bev Standing, right? Go and look her up. The story is well known. She did some work for an e-learning company. I think it was in Scotland. The e-learning company sold her voice data to a Chinese company. The Chinese company sold her voice data to TikTok. She was the first AI voice of TikTok, which she now trades off, but she took them to court because her voice was saying things that she
Well, that's
never
what
said.
I do when I fall down this hole.
Stuff like that.
Bev, what?
Bev Standing, B-E-V, Standing, it's like, anyway, so she took them to court with the help of a entertainment lawyer.
Nice.
Never got to court. They settled out of court.
Of course they did, because they knew they was wrong.
Right, they knew they were going to lose, and it was going to cost them a probably extra zero or two, you know.
Right.
But also knowing that everybody else would eventually pick up on it with news coverage and stuff like that.
Right, and you see it now. Scarlett Johansson, high profile, and in audiobooks, Julia Quinn, the Bridgerton lady. She's been in the press recently about Facebook scraping the audiobooks of her books and using that data without permission. All of that stuff. So there is a contract addendum that Nava created with legal help, which we can all use for free. You basically give it to a client and say, I'd like you to sign this as an addendum to my contract, just saying you're not going to be, you're not going to work in an abusive way with my voice data.
That's the way it should be.
Good.
Right, right. And to be fair, probably 99% of people want to work that way.
Yeah.
It's that 1% you got to watch out for. So that's how it plays in. And at the all businesses have a pyramid, right? And there are opportunities at the bottom of that pyramid that don't pay as well, and there are opportunities at the top pyramid that pay very well in all of these different things. So in video games, there are people who want you to do work for $5 and $10, and there are people at the top of it that will pay you tens of thousands of dollars to be in their game. I wish. Anyway, I was shortlisted. Oh, I wish I'd have got that. That would have been fun. I was shortlisted for something which would have taken me to San Francisco for 3 weeks to record, and that was going to pay about 50 grand. I didn't book it.
Sign me up.
Well, clearly, once you get up to that, there aren't many of those jobs. Clearly, there are more jobs down here than there. But it's hard to earn a full-time living wage at $10 a pop, right? So you've got to decide at what is voiceover for you. If it's a side hustle, bit of a hobby, kind of doesn't matter so much, does it? Because your future livelihood is not based on where you start yourself out at. For me, it's a bit different. So I think that answers your question a little, but it's an important question to ask. So those of you who are on the film side of the business and might want to cast something, this is a look at what a casting notice might look like. This is a sort of a video game animation style, but the information that you would need to provide to the talent is kind of the same, somewhat. I'm going to move. I told you I might walk around roads. It's just because I haven't my glasses on, so I need to be able to see there. Oh no, I could stand over here. That would be better. I could read it off the screen, couldn't I? So first of all, if you're lucky, you'll have a picture. This happens to be a lady, but this way. Is that?
Oh no, you're fine. I was just helping him out.
She lives in the land of the Emirates, and she's a woman, and she's young, and she's going to speak with a British accent. So that's what they're looking for. But it could equally say, boy 70 or whatever, speaks with a neutral American accent. And it gives you a bit of background to her, she's confident, she's mysterious, she's witty, and then there's some audition lines. So your job as an actor is to interpret those lines, taking into account all this other stuff. Much as you would if you were auditioning for an on-camera or a stage role, right? You'd have some lines, you'd have a character brief, or maybe a plot line, that kind of stuff. One of the interesting things, the big differences between video game and everything else is the narrative, right? Stage, screen, animation. What's the narrative? It's linear. The story goes in one direction only, from beginning to middle to end. And if you've read the whole story, you know where it starts, you know where it finishes, you know where it ends. You know where your character's journey starts, how they're feeling at the beginning, how they're feeling and what happens to them in the end. With video games, because the player has control and can go and do stupid things that, who knows? That's why we have QA, because they give it out to people to play the game, because game players do really stupid things that the people who made the game never thought you would possibly do. Yeah, there are people who go into video games and trying to figure out how to get through a solid wall. Because you can, often you can. Anyway, I digress again. Then you'll need to tell them when you want the audio back by. I've seen them, and people give you months. Don't give people months. Give them a week at most. Because otherwise you're sitting around, you're dribbling in and you're waiting, and people who say, oh, I've got 2 months, and they forget about it, don't do that. If you're an actor and you're performing these lines, you might do just one take and be happy, or you might provide 2 takes. Again, on camera, typically 1 or 2 takes. 2, typically. And what do they say about those 2 takes? Contrast. Same thing. Same thing. If you're going to do 2 takes, a lot of the voiceover casting directors will say, if they're not significantly different, don't do 2 takes. I don't want to listen to, you just put a slight inflection difference or a very slight attitude difference. They don't want to do that because they've only got your voice. They haven't got all that kind of body language and stuff that you can provide to a self-tape, right? So make it significantly different. Things like, why not play it sad one time and why not play it joyous a second time? So you've got a really big difference. Same voice, really different, really big difference. Or if you're good at accents, do one in a neutral and one in a New York accent or something like that. You're going to want to say what kind of format you want your audio audition in. Typically that will be an MP3 file. Final files for a final thing would normally be in WAV format. Why do they want MP3?
because it sucks.
Because
The
it's,
bit rate is
'cause
a lot
it's
less.
smaller.
Yeah. That's
Because it's smaller.
why do they want it?
Yeah, why
Oh, I
do
thought
they
you
want it
said
as,
they didn't
why
want
the
it.
audition as an MP3 because it's smaller, it doesn't take up much space, really. And then how they want the file named. Right down to, this one says underscore first, space last, with a capital letter at each of them, right? Little things like that are ways in which the casting director will bin you. Because they're going to get 800, 1,000 submissions. And they're going to go through, and if you've not named it exactly how they ask, they'll bin you. Because they haven't got the time to waste listening to 3 minutes of your fantastic audition because you couldn't follow the first instruction that they gave you. Where to send it to, an email address typically, and they'll normally, very often, give you, like in the subject line of the email, what do they want you to call it? Again, so that when these hundreds of emails arrive in their inbox, they can go that way, they can put them all in a file pretty quickly and easily. Tell them how much you want to pay, because a talent will want to know that. The $250 per hour, minimum 2 hours, that's an indie video game budget, typical in this country. $250 for a studio hour, minimum 2 hours. So $500. But know that nothing is set in stone. Talk to your talent. Allow talent to talk to you. So let's say it's a mobile video game, and a lot of these mobile video games, there's 10 lines, and you're done in 15 minutes, right? If I know that's the case, I'll take $250 and waive the 2 hours. Or if they haven't got that budget, we'll talk to them about the budget. I would rather be working than not. But for an indie video game, that's the starting point. If you want to write it down, if you want to have some idea of rates for all those other 30 genres, because they're all different. God, my life. GVAA rate guide. GVAA rate guide. Look that up on the internet. That'll take you to a place that'll help you. Again, that is prepared by people in LA. Know that that's based on perceptions of what rates should be in LA. And if you're dealing with a local business in South Carolina, the chances that they'll pay LA rates is pretty slim. So
You do it for $50?
no. How big is the role? Tell them how big the role is. So, I mean, the one I went down to in Atlanta was a union gig, so it didn't matter, right? 4 lines. You know, someone says it's 4 lines. Am I going to charge them? It depends on who it is, but probably I'm not going to charge them $500. Probably. Inform them whether you require them to sign an NDA.
That's right.
We were talking earlier. I have had the most amazing 6 months booking some most amazing things, and I can't talk to anybody about any of them. It's so frustrating.
I'm gonna get a domain for studioname.com.
It's probably taken. And if for the final recording you're going to require a certain way of connecting, tell them that too. Because, well, Source Connect is the only one that does this, but Source Connect requires both you, the talent, and you, the caster, to own Source Connect, to be paying for it. So if as a talent you have chosen not to spend the money on Source Connect, there's no point in you submitting for that role because you can't.
Can you let them know? Well, you have to.
I'm the caster here, I'm preparing this, and I'm saying to you, Rhodes, right, this is what I want as the caster.
Can you tell them I'll get that if I'm considered or something?
Most casters will go, that's great. There's 400 others who've already got it.
Okay.
Could you like put it in your submission and say, I would like X amount so I can, buy it with that? Or
You'll be binned.
Okay. That X you out.
It's an expectation.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons in the US that Source Connect has become the the remote recording collection data program of choice is that it is because the talent has to pay for it. It's kind of like, I'm a studio, if you can't afford to buy Source Connect, you can't be a pro. Now, I don't agree with that standpoint, but I think that that's part of it.
Okay.
If you're not paying for something, you can't be any good.
Right.
It's rubbish. Session link, IPDTL, clean feed, Riverside FM. What was the other one you could use?
Oh, Lander session.
Yeah, I'll bet the talent doesn't have to pay for that.
No,
Talent has to pay for any of those others.
Yeah.
Only Source Connect. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. So that's kind of what a casting notice probably should look like. It should have information that helps the talent decide whether they want to submit, if they're in a position to submit, and it should help the talent, it should help you know that the talent is going to provide you with audio that's relevant to your project. Does that make sense? How much time have we got? Not long. I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this. We'll come back to this.
Probably like 8:15, 8:20.
Okay, we'll see. No action required, non-verbal emotes, efforts. We talked about that, Walla, all that kind of stuff. I brought some stuff that we can try and do a little exercise as a group, but I don't know if we'll have time. I'd rather cover the other information, come back to
That
it.
won't be on here. You can do that after. But.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. I was going to say we'll come back to it. It'll be a bit of fun. Oh, no, forward. Forward, anyone where you. So a lot of people who are actors and decide they want to have a go at voice acting know that, broadly speaking, in the big, vast open marketplace, there are casting platforms and you can pay them some money and you can have access to all their auditions. Right? And colloquially in the business, it's called pay to play. Online casting. I used to say, I ain't playing. I'm on there, but I ain't playing. So on those sites, there will be people who do not have a good recording environment. There will be people who do not have any acting talent. And there will be people who have a good recording environment and have acting talent. And those are the people you're competing with. Right? All these other people are like playing. So what do you need to get started? If you're going to have a good environment and you've got acting and you want to be in this pool here, and broadly, numbers-wise, you might see 100, 200, 300 people submitting for those kind of things. So if we split that equally, over here you're competing with like 100 or so, right? You're one of 100. Conversion rates for people starting out in the business, if you book 1 in 200, 1 in 300 auditions, that's probably where you're going to start. And you're looking to improve everything to get that number better. I don't know, what's it like? Well, okay, a bit of feedback from you guys. Thank you, really interesting. It's all right. For like on camera, I don't know what the expectations are for how many auditions you would submit for in a month, a year, I don't know.
Usually 2 a month, maybe 3.
2 a month?
It just depends.
Just depends, yeah.
Couple of months?
Yeah.
That's
2 a month.
okay. My target for voiceover is 10 a day. 200 a month. 200 a month. Or 2,500 a year. Well,
Right.
it's great practice, of course.
Right.
But that's what you need to do to compete, because that's what the people at the top are doing. There's a guy called J. Michael Collins, and he talks about you need to be, he uses the word touching, which I'm not entirely certain about, but he talks about 25 touches a day. So that might be 10 auditions, it might be 10 reaches out to people on LinkedIn and 5 people who you already know and talking to them about. So you're marketing yourself to 25 people every day. That's his thing. My thing is 10 auditions a day. I don't care about the rest. If I'm doing my 10 auditions a day, I'm a happy bunny.
So if I
I was like, I don't know. I'm scared. This is a safe place.
So I can ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a closet that was just built. So how thick should my padding be on the wall that I get? Padding, how thick should it be? Should the floor be fitted?
So you're talking about the space
Yeah, the space.
that you're recording in. Probably Ken's in a better position to answer this question than I am. There are multiple factors, and thickness isn't necessarily the factor, it's the mass that makes the difference.
When you say mass,
How thick it is, how dense it is.
how thick, how dense?
Yeah, so for example, before I bought my booth, I built a temporary structure out of bookcases and loaded it up with books because books are dense and create mass. So they're quite good at controlling sound. And the other thing is, when we think about,
An audio engineering class?
yeah, probably,
Yes.
that would probably be a good thing.
Yes, yes, yes. Please.
So there's two. We could go off right down a rabbit hole here. When thinking about sound, there are kind of broadly two things you need to be thinking about. Right? What you're thinking about is stopping sound getting in from the outside. Right? So the other thing you need to think about is once you're in your space, what's happening to the sound while it's in there.
Make sure it's not echoey.
Reflections. Yeah, you don't want it completely dead either. You don't want it to be an anechoic chamber, anechoic chamber, a dead room. You don't want that because it just sounds flat, dead. So you see these kind of egg box foams, and you can buy them cheaply on the internet, and they're probably next to useless.
Don't get those.
Probably not. Again, well, you can see here, there's no egg box foam in here. Those are panels on the back wall, right? See the grey panels on the back wall? These are diffusion panels?
Those are absorption.
Absorption panels. So they're absorbing sound, stopping it reflecting.
There's also no parallel walls in here.
Yeah. Which is a problem for houses. Right? And any pretty much. So yeah. So if I talk that way and there's nothing there, the sound's going to bounce right back at me. Right? If I talk that way, the sound's going to bounce off that way. Yeah, does that make sense?
It's going to go up, it's going to go down.
Right, all over. Yeah. So I really don't have an answer to your question,
Come back
but
for our audio class.
you know, yeah, audio class. Go to YouTube. There's lots of people will tell you how to build a home audio studio at home out of PVC pipes and blankets and stuff like that.
Could you add one more thing on that?
Yeah.
What kind of mic do you use typically for auditions?
I own two mics.
Yeah.
I never thought I would own two mics.
Two's better than one?
No, because you only use one at a time typically. I have a Neumann TLM 103, which is a bit brighter on my voice, but a bit more forgiving. So I do get asked for that by some of the video game people, which is why I still have it. Otherwise I would have sold it by now, because my mic of choice is a Sennheiser 416, which is a shotgun mic, and my voice sounds just a bit deeper and richer on it. So
What is it?
you got a 416? Yeah, I love my 416. The reason I bought a 416 was because my agent in LA started sending me promo work, or auditions anyway. And in LA, the 416 is the mic that all the promo and trailer houses prefer. And that comes from the film industry because they've been used on sets, because they're shotgun mics. So they go into the studio and they want to have the same mic that was used on set. And then, of course, the studio says, well, we're using a 416, so if you're working from home, we need you to have one of those too. So I'm like, all right, okay. And there's something called a Synco D2. You familiar with that? Yeah? Synco D2 is like a quarter of the price of a 416 and apparently sounds a lot like it. And I was going to buy one of those because I'm a cheap ass, right? And my wife said, buy the 416. I'm like, why? And she said, you'll never have to say to somebody in LA, no, I haven't got a 416. I've got this Synco D2, which sounds just like it, I promise you. Right? And the studio going, I don't believe you. So I bought the 416. Though both of those are, give or take, $1,000.
Synco what again?
Synco D2, I think.
Okay.
I mean, you search hard enough, you'll find it.
Sure.
Go 416 sound alike, and you'll probably find it.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Don't buy something like a Blue Yeti or a podcaster's mic, because it won't serve you well.
Yeah.
So what do you need to get started? What kind of money do you need to spend?
Finally.
It used to be, I always used to think, and all the people would say, don't buy a microphone with a USB connection that plugs directly into your computer. You need something with an XLR connection through an interface or a preamp and then in, because it's much better. And that is true. And that is true. But technology has moved on sufficiently that if you're starting out, buying a microphone with a USB connector into a computer, a decent one, $200, $150 or thereabouts, that's kind of your price range, will get you started. And the reason I talk about that is because you've now eliminated a piece of kit that you have to buy. You don't have to buy the interface, the preamp. Because the XLR microphones don't work on their own. They have to be powered, and they get powered by an interface or a preamp. Whereas the USB mics have a little onboard preamp, which when you plug it into your computer, they work. You probably disagree with me.
It's your class.
If you can afford an XLR connecting and an interface, blah, 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 that will be better in the long run, because you will end up, as your career grows, you will have to evolve into that. You will need a computer. Most of you probably already have one, but what? PC, $400, get a decent computer. You'll need something to listen back on, right? Your little tinny laptop computer speakers, not going to serve you well. You need to hear the audio clearly. The barrier for quality of what you send as a voice actor is much higher than for music. Because with music, you don't bother with the clicks and the pops and stuff, just get hidden. And you listen to pop songs, you'll hear the big breaths and all of that. In voiceover, pretty much you don't want that. So you need to be able to hear all of that. And you need to learn a little bit about how to solve that problem. So you'll need a decent pair of headphones. Sony MDR 7502, I think, are about $100. They're pretty decent. I had a problem with mine. I loved mine, but they have these little plastic covers on the ears which start flaking off after a while. So I bought some replacements, and then they started flaking off, and then I went and bought some Biodynamic DT 770 Pro, 80 ohm. I know what I'm talking about. They're a bit more, they're about 150, 170, something like that. You need, I've talked about soundproof, nothing's really soundproof, but treated, something that enables you to control the sound. Sound coming in from outside, you know, the lawnmower man. I had a tree stump grinder man in my not in my backyard, my neighbour's backyard this afternoon, only recording this afternoon. And I have a $10,000 voiceover booth, and the guy grinding the stump across the road, I can still hear him. Would you hear someone outside doing
Sometimes,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's real loud.
Yeah.
But
This
the only
was-
thing I really hear is somebody running up back. There'll be kids that'll run sometimes.
Yeah.
Down that little slope.
Yeah. So here we are in a professionally built and treated place, and some stuff still comes in from the outside. So you're trying to just control that as best you can. And then you need something on the inside. And so you talk about your closet. My first recording area was my walk-in closet. My first sound treatment was the clothes hanging up in my closet, right?
You didn't have floating floors, right?
No. No. And there was a guy who would come home on a Friday afternoon and he rode a Harley Davidson. And you've heard them. Bob, 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 bob. Bass is probably the worst sound in the world to try and deal with, right? Through the ground, like 500 yards from his driveway, across through my back garden, up into my walk-in closet. Friday afternoons, I basically didn't do any recording. Bob, bob, bob. He would just let it sit there, bob, 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 all afternoon. Bob, bob, bob. Dear me. And I've talked to you about bookcases and duvets and blankets and all that kind of stuff. You will need some software to collect the audio data. Yeah. Audacity is free, and there's a reason for that, but you know, it's a place to start.
Reaper is
Well, yeah, I would probably recommend going and looking at something like it's called Reaper, like Don't Fear the Reaper.
I got that reference.
They won't edit your audio. Reaper lets you have it for free while you are evaluating it. And if you can deal with the pop-up that keeps popping up every few days saying, have you finished evaluating Reaper? Or, you know, are you still evaluating? And you just press, I'm still evaluating, you can have it for free forever, as long as you keep dealing with that. The license to buy it, $60. So I paid the $60 eventually to avoid having to. All right.
That's not a monthly $60,
No,
is it?
no.
Okay, cool.
No. In theory, as they update it and update it and update it, the license eventually will expire and they'll ask you for another $60
Okay.
or $80 or whatever. I've had Reaper for probably about 4 or 5 years and I haven't had to pay another $60 yet.
Some people have GarageBand or.
Whatever,
It's
yes.
another free.
Oh yeah, yeah.
memo on your iPhone.
Yeah. Oken, O-C-E-N, Oken Audio, Twisted Wave. There's Logica. There's loads of them out there. Pro Tools. You a Pro Tools guy? Yeah, Pro Tools. If you the artistic people amongst you, maybe you have the Adobe suite, and you've included in that Adobe Audition, which is great. But you're paying monthly subscription for that. Yes, hand up at the back, Serena. No, hand down. I was just about to ask about Adobe. Okay. And you'll need a calling card. Your demo. That's where it starts getting maybe complicated. If you are skilled, you could maybe make your own demo. We are our own worst critics, as are our husbands and wives and brothers who will just tell you you're great. So I believe in hiring someone to tell me that it's good or not good, to direct me. You get coaching while you're doing it, if you're directing. Someone to produce it, make it sound great. You will need, depending on what you want to do, a minimum of 3. You'll need a commercial demo. No agent voiceover agent will consider you without a commercial demo because that's the work that they book mostly. That's where the money is. Commercials are paid based on the usage. How wide will it be seen? So it might only be a 30-second commercial, but if it's playing in the Super Bowl, right, the advertising space in the Super Bowl, and it has the largest audience, the most eyes on it, right, a single play will probably cost the company who's asked the ad agency to make it, blah, 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 hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for that 30-second slot. And part of that comes to you as the talent, either on screen or voiceover, okay? That's where the money is. Broadcast advertising has moved, so we now have digital broadcast. You can put an ad onto Instagram or Facebook and you can pay Instagram or Facebook or any of them to expand the reach of that to more people than your account is seen by. Right? That's digital broadcasting, that's usage, 1 year, blah, 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 global. That's more money. That's where the money's at. not video games. But you'll need a demo. You'll need a commercial demo, right? If you want to attract or be attractive to voiceover agents. Remember that list of 30? A lot of them were like kind of corporate-y, e-learning, corporate videos, real estate videos, all that kind of stuff. So you'll need something that demonstrates that you can narrate copy in an interesting way. Health and safety training for Milliken, right? It's probably not a great read, but you've got to.
Oh, Michelin. Okay.
Or Michelin.
Gotcha.
No, Milliken, I was thinking Spartanburg, you say Milliken,
Oh,
the
okay.
carpet people. But Michelin also, probably not that.
I was confused.
Don't
worry about me.
No. Okay, Michelin, right? The wonders of tires. Right? The chemical composition of tires, right? E-learning. It's probably not a great read. You're not likely to take it home, go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. Well, you probably would fall asleep. Anyway, but you'll need something that, if you want to be in that business, you'll need something that demonstrates that you can do that kind of work. Because an HR person at Milliken or Michelin doesn't want to hear your commercial voice, doesn't want to hear you going, and today we're going to sell X number of cars, at the Gilstrap family or whatever. Yeah, there you go, you see. Yeah, everybody knows it though, don't they? Branding, everybody knows who he is. And if you want to get into what you might call the more actory end of the business, the animation, the video, you're going to have some kind of character video game animation kind of demo. Okay? Yes. 5. What?
5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, shit. Okay. So you add all that, it's somewhere around $1,000. But you may already own a computer and so on. So anyway, it's from scratch. That's the kind of minimum. I have a studio at home. I've probably spent, I don't know, comfortably into 5 figures. Okay, I wanted to talk just a tiny wee bit about where to go to find stuff, to find people. Okay, you can pay money to these online platforms, but we're already talking about spending, So where can you go? So there are conferences, conventions, online, the internet is a wonderful place. Social media, lots of people will put casting notices up on social media, and here are some of those. Right? I don't really want to spend hours going through each one of these individually, but know that there is voiceover work literally everywhere you look. Over the next few days, as you go through your life, every time you hear a voice that's been produced on the radio, in a lift, going through a hotel, on the TV, all these different things, you're at work and someone says you've got to do this training today, whatever. Every time you hear that, someone got paid to do that. It's literally everywhere. Anyway, yeah, all that. Oh, that's it. Depends on if you want to mess with the silly thing that I was going to do. But if you want to follow along with what I do, you can follow me on Instagram at The British Voice. If you're a bit more corporate-y and you want to find me in a business place, LinkedIn, Ian Russell, The British Voice. You get a theme? If my website, British-voiceovers.com. That's what it says on the tin. I'll have a new I have a new domain which is currently being set up, which will be ianrussellvoice.com. Because my web developer said, you need something with your name in it, because you're a celebrity. Anyway, so yeah, I do have a silly thing, but I don't know if we have time for that. So let's take questions to start. Rhodes always has a question.
Yeah,
Everywhere I've been and spoken, and he's been in the room, I look in his Go ahead, bud. Go on, buddy. Go on,
I'll
buddy.
kick things off.
Yeah, that's fine.
So what what are some things, we talked a little bit about them, but what would convince a filmmaker or help them sell voiceover for the work that they're doing for a client?
Talking about the benefit of, well, I mean, ultimately it depends on the type of film you're making, doesn't it? So if you're making an entertainment piece, broadly speaking, the voice is going to move the narrative or fill the screen, help fill the screen, isn't it? So like film noir, you know, it always starts with, "Oh, it was a rainy night in London and I was walking down the street and this broad came," you know, that's a voiceover, right? At the beginning of those kind of movies. So they're moving the narrative forward. The one that I did, the woman comes in and she switches on the TV and walks away and there's something playing in the background. That's just filling the story, making it more real. Because if she came in and switched the TV on and nothing happened and walked away, that's not real, isn't it? Because she'd be going back and kicking it because it's not come on. Yeah, or unless it's set in the 1950s and it takes 10 minutes to warm up. So if it's entertainment, then I think it's about the storytelling. It's about where's that happening. So if one of your lead or supporting characters is making a phone call, right? And they go, "How you doing, Chuck?" "Yeah, I'm doing great." It moves the story along if on the screen the viewer can go, "Hey, yeah, I'm great, how are you?" Like with a bit of an effect that sounds like it's on a phone. It just moves the story along, fills the screen with something more real. For corporate stuff, I don't know, you're making a 1-minute corporate film to tell people how wonderful your factory is, okay? And that takes what, all day to film? A day, 2 days, 3 days? Yeah, something like that. If you need actors, you're gonna have to hire actors for 1, 2, and 3 days to come in and fill the screen with someone talking about the whatever it happens to be. With the voiceover, you can add it afterwards in post. It'll be cheaper, probably. Will it be better? I don't know, it's a matter of preference, I think. The e-learning thing is for big corporates, absolutely, it's a money-saving exercise. But they're willing to pay between, typically, let's say 15 cents and 35 cents per word for e-learning. Right, so an hour is, let's call it 10,000 words. At 35 cents a word. How much?
$3,500.
Right, $3,500 for a finished hour of work. Right. Now, 35 cents at the top end, and typically that would be complex language. They'll pay more if it's like medical, chemical, yeah, complex financial, stuff like that. I do a bit of financial because I worked in the business. So a lot of the big fancy words that they use, I'm like, oh, I know what that is. And the other big secret is my degree was in chemistry. So I'm completely unfazed by big, long chemical words. I can figure it out. The real challenge is medical people who invent a word for their product, right? And it might be like 4 or 5 syllables, and when you read it, the stress should be on that 3rd syllable right there. It's so obvious. Nope, we want it right there. We want the stress in the wrong place. That's often the hardest one because you're just like, oh, da-da-da-da-bum-bum. It's da-da-da-da-bum-bum. No, it is a da-bum-ba-da-da-da-da. Right, whatever. I don't know if that answers, what's the value? I mean, you're telling, it doesn't matter whether it's corporate or entertainment or anything else, you are telling a story. So if you've got someone who's good at telling stories, and actors tend to be pretty good at telling stories, then you're going to get more engagement from the people who are viewing it.
2 questions. Where in your career do you feel the need to ever update your demos? And then how far along were you when you found an agent?
So I am not a good example of that.
Okay.
so what's happened in the demo space is an increasing fragmentation. So I talked about kind of needing 3 to cover everything as a starting point. But most people will tell you now, if you want to be in e-learning, you've got to have a special e-learning demo. If you want to sell your thing to casinos, you've got to have something, a casino demo. You know, political, you've got to have a political demo. I don't really want to go too far down there because you don't need that to start with. Right? Here's another thing. If you want to buy a professional demo from a top demo producer, find someone, let's say, in the UK, rather than someone in, let's say, the US. Why is that? Top demo producers in the US will charge you $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, $3,000, even up to $5,000 for your demo. In the UK, you'll get a top demo producer in the UK for £400 or £500, so say $700. So you can get 3 for the price of 1. Right? Now I know that, don't I? Because I know the British people. Yes?
What food and drinks do you try to stay away from before you go into your booth to do your work?
Chocolate, milk, anything mucousy. If I have done that, then green apples are a great temporary solution. Green apples, crunchy green apples, not the red ones. The green ones have some kind of special thing in them that helps cleanse your mouth. The big thing is hydrate, water, drink lots of water. But sip it, don't glug it.
I was about to say, but not like super cold water, because sometimes. Like, if
Right,
you
because
drink
then,
ice water, it gets all,
same thing. You know when we get cold, things shrink up?
Yep.
Same. Take your mind out of the gutter, Ian. Our vocal cords they're muscles, so we have to warm them up, and we have to keep them hydrated, and don't make them cold or too hot or anything like that. Yeah.
What do you do for an overworked voice? Especially if you're doing 10
Stop. There's something called straw phonation. Do you know about that? Okay, so if you get a straw and hum through a straw, that will help your voice recover more quickly than if you just stop.
2 coffee straws.
2 coffee straws? Yeah,
You don't
yeah,
want to
straw
have a big
phonation.
straw, you have to have
A little small, yeah, a little straw, like a kazoo kind of thing.
If you're made of money, you can get those stainless steel.
Well, it's interesting you say that. So we do have one of those. We actually have some glass straws. I don't know how we ended up with them. That I don't know. But I tend to use that because the paper straws kind of get gunky and have to throw them away. So yeah, but anything like that, or I suppose do it will help. But they've done some work, and apparently your voice recovers more quickly if you've done that for 5 or 10 minutes.
Look up "Straws Will Save Your Life" on YouTube. It's a
Yeah.
breakdown.
And as with any singer, actor, stage actor, whatever, do a bit of warm up before you start. Yeah, right. So let's learn from that. Opera singers who probably use their voice in a pretty extreme way, they warm up. Why did they do that?
Because their diaphragm, I'm actually learning with an opera singer, and she's like, yeah, your diaphragm has to be like.
Everything's got to learn. Yeah, let's take it. Athletes, right, who are going to go and run the 100-meter sprint, and they have to run as fast as they can for 10 seconds. What do? They spend half an hour warming up beforehand.
A company to go that route.
Oddly enough, it's not really that much cheaper.
Okay.
Because there's still got to be a human telling the AI what to do.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
We created it.
Yeah.
Because, right, but also if you take some voice data that sounds a certain way, and then you want to make it sound a different way, so it's sad and you want to make it sound happy, you've got to know how to change the pitch and the tone and all the rest of it and the stresses to make it sound the way you want to sound, the way you want it to sound. And sure, there I'm sure are programs that have been written that can help with that, but right now anyway, a human still has to go in and tweak it, right? And we've all heard where AI, most of the time, you can tell,
Yes.
can't you? Right? There's something called the uncanny valley, where our ears just go, it's not inhuman.
That don't sound
right?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right. Now, let's just rewind that for a minute. Where were we 2 and 3 years ago? You know, Stephen Hawking was the pinnacle of AI voices, right? And look where we are now, just a few years later. And there are times, you go, I'm not sure, can't figure out whether that's, yeah? So, and it is going to get better. So but that comes back to my point earlier. If, let's say, you have created an AI clone of your voice and you're selling it, as long as you know that it's being bought, you know and give consent to what it's being used for, and you're compensated appropriately for that, right down to, is it e-learning or is it a Super Bowl ad? You should still be compensated appropriately.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to change. Right? I'm old enough that in 15 years I probably won't be doing this to the extent I'm doing it now. Or if I am, it'll be because people are asking me, not because I'm hustling for it. Right? Or I won't care as much. Right? I won't have, you know, my kids are out and at college now. They'll have been finished college in a way. I'll have downsized. I'll, you know, who knows what. You know, my voice will have given up the ghost. Who knows? Who knows? But the world will continue to change. So we've got to, the way I analogized it was, you stood on the beach. Someone says, there's a tsunami coming and it's going to swamp the entire continent. It's 2,000 feet high. Right? An asteroid hit the middle of the Pacific and we're all going to die. What do? You've got a choice. You run away from it, you stick your head in the sand and hope that it won't happen, or you grab your surfboard and you go, I'm going to ride that mother, right? And AI is a bit like that, right? AI is a bit like that. I'm in the camp. We can't stop it. There's no point in ignoring it. It's coming anyway. There's a little point in running away from it because it's traveling faster than you are. So you might as well grab your surfboard and see if you can ride that. Yeah.
I like
Anything else?